Chalk prevails in the top 4 of the draft last night. We end up having 6 quarterbacks in the top 12. A bad beat on the wide receivers prop. The Raiders take a tight end.
Yeah.
So much to unpack. And I buried the lead of the fact that the Atlanta Falcons took Michael Penix Jr. at number 8 overall.
The lead is you didn't trust your instincts on J.J. McCarthy, and you went with the public, and you got sucked in on all the Twitter noise. And your instinct said, I'm not and you went and met. It's the only bet you made that wasn't a good bet.
My only loser
was
the under 5.5.
To ignore the noise. Ignore the noise of all this rhetoric. Your instinct said, you cover college football for a living. You see all this, right? So you trusted it. It made no sense to you, but yet you fell into it. And look, there could have been a case where he would have been 4th, and maybe it was fortunate. But the reality of it is I think the lesson is, the news of the day is trust your instincts.
And I got to tell you, Michael, even though I lost that bet, I was thrilled that a team didn't reach and say, okay, we're going to go ahead and take a guy that's 15th, 16th on the board as our number 4 overall pick in the first round. So that was a relief to me. I think J.J. McCarthy ended up in a wonderful landing spot with the Minnesota Vikings. No better coach for him in that situation than Kevin O'Connell. Of the weapons that are going to be around him. Opportunity to sit with Sam Darnold, being that bridge quarterback. So much to like about that situation. By the way, this is the Lombardi Line presented by DraftKings on a Friday as we are recapping a busy Thursday. Round 2 of the draft beginning later on tonight, which we'll preview in a little bit here. What were some of your biggest takeaways, though, from last night?
I mean, I've been hammering the Falcons, so let's put them off. Let's put them off to the side. My takeaway was this obsession with offensive players. The Raiders not taking an offensive lineman. Look, the Raiders are sitting there at 13. They didn't get the quarterback they want. They don't have a quarterback of the future. It's not Gardner Minshew. I understand they couldn't get the quarterback. Sometimes you can't. The Giants couldn't get the quarterback they wanted, right? It just happens, and you can't force it. But you have to go back to your team-building methodology and say to yourself, look, we've got to fix this offensive line. And the only way we're going to catch the Chiefs is through great defensive and offensive linemen. They didn't do that. And I think Seattle on the over prop this year is really a good bet. I think McDonald's a good coach. I think he's going to be really good. I think the improvement they're going to have defensively, because they've got some good players on defense. Now they add Murphy inside, who I loved, who a lot of people had as their best defensive player on the board. Wasn't Dallas Turner. And I think some other teams were trying to get up to get Murphy from the back end, because there should be no reason he slipped. He should have went 9 or he should have went 8 to Atlanta. And I think that Seattle did. And I think the other one, I've been very critical of Gus Bradley and his defense at Indianapolis, because it relies so much on pass rush. It relies so much on the front four, much like Chicago's pass rush defense relies on them. And I think to get Latua, one of the best rushers in the draft, who is better than Dallas Turner, not that Dallas Turner's not a good player, I think that was a really good pick. And I just think, to me, the art of team building is getting thrown out by some of these teams, because you're not going to catch the team you have to beat if you can't control the line of scrimmage.
I do think it's interesting that 2 players who throughout this draft process we were questioning how teams were going to react and evaluate the medical end up going in the top 14. Michael Penix Jr., of course, to number 8 overall to the Falcons, and then Laiatu Latu, who you mentioned, at number 15 overall, who we were talking about could be the best defensive player in this draft, but will he ultimately get picked there because of the injury concerns that he has with his neck fusion surgery? And not only is he the first defensive player off of the board here, Michael, but he comes at number 15. We had a run of 14 straight offensive players to a record 23 in the first round.
When I came in here yesterday to get ready for the GM Shuffle Draft Show, Tim, who joined us, did a great job. Tim Murray and JVT were sitting here, and I came in and I announced to both of them that there were going to be 6 quarterbacks picked in the first 12. Not because I thought that. I was told that. And they both boo-hooed me and ha-ha. And so when you get 6 of the picks are quarterbacks, that only leaves 9 other positions. And so we know there's the three receivers are certainly worthwhile to pick. Now, would I have guessed Bowers, a tight end, goes at 13? Especially a tight end that's not an on-the-line Y. It's not like you're getting getting a really good receiving tight end, which is important, but we saw that happened. I just think it's the way it went, and some teams have decided to ignore. Look, the reason you're picking in the top 10 is probably because your defense stinks.
Jason Fitz, you know him, correct? Former
sure,
ESPN.
yeah.
So he is a diehard Raiders fan, doing great work with Fox Sports Radio now. He tweeted, after years of hearing, wait, who is this guy? Wasn't he projected to go in the 87th round? After every first-round pick for my beloved Raiders, I refuse to be negative about picking the best player available that was stunningly still available. So he's taking the little win of just like, we got a guy with name value who's extremely talented.
It's a really good win, but the problem is, will they all be around to enjoy it? You know, I mean, that's the problem. You can't block any unless you can get a guarantee from Chris Jones to count the 5 Mississippi. You know, when you play the Chiefs, you're not going to throw. You can't block. You have a quarterback who's 6 feet tall. He can't see down the field. He's a backup quarterback. He's your starting quarterback. Aiden O'Connell's not a starter. You've said this many times. You have no quarterback, right? And so you have a little guy at quarterback. What do? You lost your best running back. Okay, I get that. Zaire White, you improved it. You say, okay, we want a back that can do more, that's cheaper. Not can do more, but it's cheaper. To me, this Raider way is a slogan.
Yeah.
The Raider way is a foundation of team building. There's 2 different elements there.
We mentioned it in the first hour, but I just think that for a team like that, it's so crazy to me that when you think about building your team around a way to knock off the Kansas City Chiefs, if you don't have the quarterback, you do need defense, and you have so much talent in Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins. Imagine adding another one of those really talented guys to that group. Even if you could get a Quinyon Mitchell as a great corner, like there were so many options there at 13. So to see that be what they do, I think is interesting. Paulie Howard tweeted at Circa, the Raiders to take a tight end. Not even to take specifically Brock Bowers, although obviously the first tight end off the board would be him. 100-1 was the price here for that to happen.
Well, it made no sense. I mean, it really, because he can't shift the field. I mean, he needs a quarterback to get him the ball. He's dependent on the quarterback. They don't really have an elite quarterback. And then you got Devontae Adams. He wants the football. You got Jacoby Myers, who's a good inside slot receiver. So, you've got that. Where are we going here now? Where's the art of team building? And look, Telesco has always ignored the offensive line at the Chargers. That's what he did. He's tried to mix and match it. Now, later in his career, he drafted Slater. He drafted Johnson from Boston College. But that line was always put together. This line is a disaster. It's not a good line. It really isn't. I mean, I'm being nice. It's not. And so when you have Parham, who's a center, trying to play guard, they've worked on this before. Parham couldn't play guard, but now they have to play him at guard. They signed Andre James back to a contract, even though they weren't sure they wanted to do that. They don't have anybody. Now, defensively, love the Wilkins signing. Love that. Think he's great. But if you put Murphy next to Wilkins, all of a sudden now, how many times, this is what I'll continue to say until I'm blue in the face, the more guys that you have in a defensive line that can win one-on-one matchups against offensive linemen makes your defense better. So 2 guys are blocking Max Crosby at all times. So now inside, if you have Wilkins and you have Murphy, all of a sudden somebody's one-on-one. And you're going to win that most times. You're going to win that with these guys because they're good. And then on the outside, if Tyree Wilson comes around and he makes, or Malcolm Kuntz, that can close the gap. That gives how did they beat Kansas City on Christmas Day? Because their front dominated Kansas City's offensive line. That's what that's going to take again. They didn't close the gap on Kansas City. Their number did not shift one instance on the overprop. It didn't move an inch.
The projection for Brock Bowers was, for most people, to go to the New York Jets. And I got to tell you, Michael, I am so dang proud of the New York Jets for taking Olu Fashanu. That's what they should have done.
Given the Ifers credit, right? That's who the new general manager of the Bears, Caleb Williams, wanted them to pick too. He tweeted that out. And I think that makes sense because if you look at the Bears' offensive line, and I think to me, that's a real weakness of their team. They're not great in the offensive line. And everybody wants to say, well, Houston had, when C.J. Stroud went into Houston, all of a sudden things changed. Well, Houston's got Tunzel at left tackle. They got Howard at right tackle. They drafted a center. They put a lot of money in their offensive line. They signed Shaq Mason. That offensive line in Houston to help Stroud was way better than this offensive line in Chicago, or way better than the offensive line here in Las Vegas. To me, it comes down to, can we protect the quarterback? Or else you're into the mayhem. You're into the same situation that happened in Washington where Sam Howell's getting the crap beat out of him.
As we look at the 6 quarterbacks that are taken in the top 12, who do you think is in the best situation for their rookie year?
I think Bo Nix, because the head coach is 100% behind him, and he'll do everything to make sure he looks good. And the connection between him and the head coach is going to be good. I love the J.J. McCarthy connection. I think that Kevin O'Connell will develop the quarterback. I think Drake May's going to have to redshirt. I don't know if Alex Van Pelt has the capability or the capability to develop Drake May, because it's going to require it. And so he's got Ben McAdoo's there too. Ben McAdoo's a very good evaluator of talent and quarterbacks. I think Jaden Daniels, it's going to be interesting to see, can they get him to make a second play? Jaden Daniels ran for over 1,000 yards, really good, and threw the ball in the middle field, had really good receivers to throw the ball. Obviously, 2 guys get drafted in the first round. But can he throw the ball outside the numbers? I think that's going to be the question mark. Look, Caleb's going to be good. I mean, Caleb's problems aren't going to be on the field. It's going to be, can he connect to his teammates and his personality, if you talk to SC and you talk to other places. But can they protect him too, Stormy?
One thing that I will say, because there have been a lot of question marks about Caleb Williams, the person, and how well-liked he might be from his team. Clearly well-liked by the public. Chicago's #1 overall pick broke the Fanatics record for draft night merchandise sales for any draft in any sport, beating the previous record that was just set by Caitlin Clark and Trevor Lawrence ahead of her. So Caleb Williams jersey sales were flying off of the shelf yesterday for Chicago.
Bears fans are great. I mean, they're going to buy them all. I mean, they're amazing. And look, let me say something. He's going to get all the money for Offensive Rookie of the Year. That's a lock.
We'll discuss that and a whole lot more when we come back on the Lombardi Line.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Buonantony, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
It's always football season, and the GM Shuffle podcast is a must-listen for any and every football fan. Here our guy, Michael Lombardi, giving his unfiltered opinions on players, teams, and roster decisions every single week. You can download and subscribe to the GM Shuffle podcast from VSiN and DraftKings today, or wherever you get your podcast. A fresh new episode dropping this morning. Michael and Femi getting into it with their reactions of the draft.
We didn't disagree. Femi and I were good. Femi was a huge Bo Nix fan coming out. I mean, he had a ticket for him on the MVP, on the Heisman. He was really pushing for him to be the
You're right. I do remember that.
Remember that? And I kept saying, Femi, you're not going to win this, because the Heisman, they're not giving the Heisman to Bo Nix, especially with somebody from LSU and thing. But he was all over it, and then, I think what probably didn't get him the Heisman was they didn't beat Washington the 2 times they had a chance to play him. So, but he was all over it. And, I think to me, he was, I don't want to say vindicated, but he kind of liked the player. And I think that certainly helped it. But, I mean, Femi's face when Atlanta turned in the Penix thing, and he likes, like we all do, we like Penix, we all did, was surprising. But I think to me, it's a lesson that if you don't marry the draft with the free agency with the draft, you end up wasting $90 million. Look, if Atlanta takes Penix at 8, and everybody in America, everybody in the world knew Penix was going to be available at 8, what was the prop you played? What was the bet you made on Penix?
Plus 190 for him to be a first-round pick, under 32.5.
And when did you make that?
I made it a week ago. And it ended at odds on like minus 320.
Right. So you made it all through February, March, and most of April, he was plus money. It wasn't until we got to the draft that he became, and it was going to be more in the back end of the first round, right? And it was a little bit the Raiders threatening to take him. So to me, if you're the Super Bowl winning GM Terry Fontenot, I mean, if you're him, like how do you not go into the offseason and say, look, let's save our money, we'll draft Penix here at 8. We'll spend this money on other players and improve our defense. Like, that's the conversation.
That's the thing. You do one or the other.
Right.
You don't do both. I love the clip is already going viral on Twitter of you with the 2 Rolexes.
You don't need 2 Rolex. I mean, do you wear 2? I don't even wear a watch. Do you wear 2 Rolexes? I don't have a Rolex. Millie does. I don't have a Rolex, so.
Shout out Millie.
Yeah, she has a Rolex. I don't have one. But I don't wear a watch. And so, like, why do you need that? Like, how does it, you can't. Like, I don't understand how they convinced Arthur Blank to do this. I don't know how that conversation went. Like, I don't know how – I could get Dominic, my 6-year-old grandson, to basically figure this out. He would ask a good question.
Did you see the clip of Terry Fontenot talking to Arthur Blank in
Yeah.
the room after? It looked uncomfortable.
Awkward, right? It did, yeah. I mean, I love Arthur's red coat. You know, I mean, that was funny. We were at Sinatra's one night. Millie and I were having dinner with the family. Mickey was there, Matt, and everybody was there. And Arthur Blank comes walking in, and Millie's like, I dare you to go over there and tell him he made a mistake not hiring Belichick. And I was like, I should have done that. But, like, look, he got talked out of it, and we know this. But, again, this is not a critique of Michael Penix. Mm-hmm. This is a critique of, I think, actually, and let's spin it back to betting. I think their numbers should go down in the win total because they've done nothing to help their defense that's going to be of substance. They really haven't. Kirk Cousins, they're not one player away. One of the things I wrote about in Football Done Right is any team that always believes they're one player away is lying to themselves. And their defense can't pressure the quarterback. They're 29th in forcing turnovers, 27th in interceptions. They can't make any plays.
Yeah.
So where are they going to get this? Bill Walsh used to say this all the time. The key to football is to have somebody who can rush the passer in the fourth quarter to win the game. You have to have that to be a good team. The Falcons don't have that.
I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. With this Atlanta Falcons team believing so firmly that they are ready to win now. And, I mean, bettors have believed that too. Minus 130 to win the NFC South this year. High expectations with Kirk Cousins stepping in if they can utilize and get the most out of the weapons that they have on offense, right? If you really believe that you can win, you should be doing everything you can to win now, instead of, in my mind, just having a succession plan that gives you as a general manager added length and opportunity to keep your job instead of winning to keep your job. That's what's blowing my mind is, don't you want to win to keep your job?
Right, you do, but if you've been able to convince the owner, like Kaiser Sose McKay has for 20 years, and he's 169 and 170, and now he's the executor of the Falcons owner's will, I mean, you don't sell that you're trying to win.
No.
I mean, and don't insult my intelligence. Put your name in the article. I put my name in that article. Mm-hmm. I'll defend my friend Bill Belichick. I don't really care what they say. To me, I'll defend them. To sit there like win total at 9.5, I don't see it. I think they're not. Look, they were not a playoff caliber team last year. They blame Arthur Smith for everything. I would love to hear Arthur Smith's commentary on this. Wouldn't you love to hear what Arthur Smith have to say? Last year, you told me we don't want Lamar Jackson. And this year, now you have two quarterbacks. You're wearing two Rolexes.
They were a sub-500 team last year. Like
They've been a sub-500 team for 3 years in a row.
They haven't made the playoffs in 7 years.
I know.
And again, we've taken different layers of the comparison to the Green Bay Packers situation and drafting Jordan Love when you have Aaron Rodgers on there. But don't you think that Aaron Rodgers would have liked to have another weapon after they're coming off a 13-win season and pushing for a Super Bowl?
Nick made a great point, as much as I kid him about the receivers, but you put T. Higgins on that team. I mean, that would have made Aaron Rodgers a lot better than Jordan Love. Now, it worked out down the road. But
did it work out? Because they didn't get another Super Bowl.
They didn't get another Super Bowl out of Aaron Rodgers, right. They get lost 2 conference championship games at home.
They got how many MVPs, but only 1 Super Bowl.
Exactly right. So, like the same thing here with Atlanta. Look, don't tell me you signed, tell me how Penix gets on the field if Kirk Cousins is healthy. Tell me how he gets on the field.
And Steph was funny when we were texting last night. She was like, you know what you love about you just buy a quarterback that's coming off of an injury is signing another one that's had injury history. Yeah. You know, that's great. I mean, it's the same thing, honestly, with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers right now. He's coming off of an Achilles, and their backup quarterback, Tyrod Taylor's had significant injury history.
We've given the Ifers a lot of crap here on the show, and I have certainly, but at least they picked an offensive lineman, and they protected themselves.
I thought they were going to mess it up, and they didn't mess it up.
I thought they were too, and they made it clear that they weren't going to. So giving them credit there that they addressed it. Look, we knew New Orleans. I mean, some of these teams still get it. They're not intoxicated by this notion we're playing Madden football. Like, I just don't understand how. I mean, next year Odunze could be a really good player because Keenan Allen won't be on the team. But you just wasted the 9th pick overall in the draft when you could have a defensive tackle who would have been disruptive inside.
Speaking of our conversation earlier with Nick and all the wide receivers, 7 wide receivers taken in the first round. So that prop that was juiced crazy, $3, $4 to the under, ends up going over at a plus money price. The 5th wide receiver was taken at 28 when the Chiefs traded up for Xavier Worthy. Still 5 going into pick 31. And then the 49ers take Ricky Pearsall and the Carolina Panthers trade up to take Xavier Legette. But let's stick with that Chiefs pick right there, because they had to do a trade with the Buffalo Bills in order to get it.
The Bills obviously said they weren't interested in the receivers. That was pretty clear. Now, could they get Deebo Samuel? Because we know Michael Silver, who knows what's going on in San Francisco. He said that the Niners are now more likely to trade Deebo than they are Ayuk. I said they should trade Deebo. I said it when I was on the Pat McAfee show the other day. That's who they should trade, because he's. I know it's painful for you to hear.
Don't trade anybody.
I know but they can't afford them all, Stormy. These receivers are making over $30 million. We just saw A.J. Brown redo his deal at $30-some million. We know CeeDee Lamb's going to get paid. We know Jefferson's going to get paid, right? And so you can't have 2 $30 million players at the position. You just can't. You just can't. As much as this generation wants to draft multitude of receivers, you can't have it. You can't. You got to draft them. And so the Pearsall pick is really has anything to do with their receiver room. It has everything to do with the depth in the room. If they were to trade Samuel to Buffalo, that makes Buffalo make sense. Buffalo just didn't like the receivers. Worthy is fast. There's no question. He's not Tyreek Hill at 160 pounds. Tyreek Hill is a strong. Remember, Tyreek Hill coming out of Oklahoma State was a running back. Mm-hmm. He was a running back. He was not Andy made him a slot receiver. Andy made him a receiver. And because he was big and strong and he could do that. It's an interesting pick for Kansas City. It really is.
For the 49ers there with Ricky Pearsall, I covered him this past year at Florida, also when he was at ASU. Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall actually were friends. They were teammates there for a little bit at ASU, and Ayuk, I guess, texted Shanahan, "Fire pick, can't lie." And CJ Stroud and Micah Parsons were doing like a live stream reaction to the draft as well. When Pearsall went, his reaction was, "Oh, no," because he would like to have Ricky Pearsall. He said, "Bro, he's elite. I wanted him so bad. He's nasty." So nice to see that type of a reaction from a quarterback in the league.
That's what you don't want the reaction that the Falcons got. You want the reaction that the Pearsall got.
Well, and a lot of people were like, I didn't see Ricky Pearsall being a first-round pick. So to get those types of reactions, I think are positive.
Yeah, well, that's because nobody had him going in the mock. It all comes back to how you have him in the mock. It doesn't matter. If you don't follow the mock draft board, then you're going to get an F. I mean, he
can get open. Like that is the biggest takeaway that I had from watching Ricky Pearsall.
Isn't that the number one job of receivers, to catch it and get open?
And if the ball is like in his vicinity, he's the one that's coming down with it. Those are the 2 keys that you need as a receiver,
what you have to
right?
do. Catch and get open.
But that leads us to the start of the draft today, because with Buffalo trading out of the first round, they'll have the first selection beginning in round 2. We'll dive into that as well as the Rookie of the Year prop markets for offensive and defensive players of the year. We'll be right back.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Buonantony, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We're back here on the Lombardi Line. If you haven't yet, make sure you check out the new and improved VSiN.com, where we lay out all of the best bets from all of our VSiN show hosts and guests, betting splits, exclusive articles, and a whole lot more over at VSiN.com, including MLB top plays based on betting splits, power ratings, and trends from our own Steve Makinen live today. JVT has his NBA best bets for the postseason, and Mike Somich post first round NFL futures already all up on the website right now. Again, check it out, VSiN.com.
And if you join, and you did that, which you should do, Matty Humans was 18-3 on his picks on that website. He would have made you money to pay for your subscription for 2 years. He made you enough money. He was killing it over there.
He gave out a bunch of plays on our show earlier this week. Will Hill crushed it in the draft this week too. So like a lot of if this doesn't tell you that you can win in the draft and you can win using VSiN, I don't know what does.
And again, I think the other lesson is like what we talked about with you. Don't listen to the noise. And the other thing is don't necessarily draw conclusions based on last year. Mm-hmm. Now everybody thought there was going to be a bunch of trades. I know Peter Schrager said there could be even more than 10 trades. And then Rappaport went lower. I think it's so hard. To me, predicting the trades is really hard because you got to know everybody's board. You got to know everybody's motivation. I think that's a hard prop to play into. I really do.
Yeah. Especially at the top of the draft, we didn't have those. The prop was set at 6.5. I think they had, 5?
Yeah, it hit the under, and I think to me that's a hard one to predict. The one that I think I probably didn't hit hard enough on was I had 12 defensive players that were first round worthy. And I think it was that, and if you could have gone, that prop ended up playing out really well because so many offensive players went.
Yeah, 23 offensive players. The previous record was 19 3 times, and it blew that out of the water, obviously, this time around. So round 1 is now in the books. 32 players have now made their way into the NFL ranks. 255 names still going to be heard from the stage over the next couple of days. Buffalo's going to be on the clock first today after trading out of the first round. The Chiefs go up and get Xavier Worthy. So Buffalo's picking at 33, followed by New England, Arizona. Washington has 2 picks in the top 8 today. Which teams have important picks today in your mind?
I said this, Elliot asked me this question a couple of weeks ago. What was an important draft? And I think this is really important for the Bills, right? And, now, could they find a way to get another receiver? Are they involved in a Deebo Samuel trade? I don't know. Are they involved in Ayuk? I don't know. But I do think they need to address that area, especially losing somebody as good as Stephon Diggs, who they probably feel like they needed to move on from because of his locker room behavior and all the problems that they went through. For Buffalo, clearly they didn't like the receiver board. They had a lot of receivers that they had clustered together. They added more picks, which, I'm not going to argue with how they evaluated the receiver board just because they don't do what the mock drafters want them to do. But I do think that this is going to be a key day for them because they've got to get somebody who can come in and plug and play. And I'm not talking about plug and play 1,200 plays. I'm talking about 600 plays. I'm talking about somebody come in and contribute to their team. And they could go in defensive lineman if they thought they liked one, or this is receiver. We think New England's going to take a receiver here. So, what receiver would you want to take? And clearly, Buffalo said we're not interested in taking a receiver because once they moved away from him, all the receivers started to go.
And they've had all night to think about it. So when they're on the clock later on tonight at 7 Eastern.
This pick's always the one you want to have because it's got great value, especially if you can get somebody desperate to come up. Okay. Last year, Will Levis was this pick here. There's no quarterback to come up to get in this draft. But to me, that's where I think ultimately, could they take Kool-Aid, the corner from Alabama? They could use a corner. Certainly they could. They've tried to, knowing their defensive coordinator is the head coach also. That could lend itself into thinking there.
So there are a few head-to-head props going into today of who will be drafted first. And I'm curious if your thoughts on any of these players that you thought had first-round grades or could have gone earlier but are going to be available here in the second round. You have Adonai Mitchell head-to-head as a $2 favorite against Ladd McConkey at plus 150. Cooper DeJean still available. He's minus 165 versus Kool-Aid at plus 125.
Cooper DeJean is an interesting player here because, he reminds me of, and he's very much like Micah Hyde from Iowa. They both played at Iowa. Micah Hyde was one of the Big Ten players of the year that year. I couldn't get him drafted when I was in Cleveland because he wasn't a corner, he wasn't a safety, yada, yada, yada. We went back and forth. But that would make sense for Buffalo. He fits Buffalo perfectly. Okay. He really does. And I think he's a better all-around. Kool-Aid's not in shape. Kool-Aid kind of has been resting on his laurels for a while.
You said in our commercial break he's the who of
Joel
the NFL
Embiid
draft?
of the draft. I mean, he's just never in shape, right? And so I think DeJean could be the guy that goes through that. Now, McConkey's a really good player. He's a really good player, and I like McConkey, but the medical on McConkey is a little bit of a concern. So you always worry about that. When you look at the board and you see where these guys are going, Thomas and Worthy, Mitchell and McConkey are both on that cusp of are they first rounders or second rounders. Mm-hmm. Pearsall around the league was right in that group too. So for all the people that want to give them a hard time for picking them, he was right there. And it's just preference on what you want to do at that position. But I like McConkey, I really do. And McConkey and Mitchell are both what we call 1C players. Same thing with Coleman. Coleman, that group there. And Leggett was the guy that probably went earlier than most people had. He was more of a later second-round player, but he went in the first.
Yeah, wide receiver out of South Carolina, so he gets to stay local for the hometown team, Carolina Panthers, which I'm sure will be cool for for him to stay there. That accent is unbelievable, by the way. Fantastic. There were a couple great moments last night as well that I just, before we move on.
Tell me, I was sitting here.
Did you see, at least on social media, Brian Thomas's mom and dad?
No, I would have loved to seen that. Were they happy?
So it was so sweet. Oh my gosh, they're so happy. They're just talking about how awesome it is that Brian Thomas, first round pick, all of these things. Doing an interview with Laura Rutledge, and Laura Rutledge asked his mom, how far has this family come? And she goes, well, we came from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It was the cutest moment.
Oh, I love that.
I've ever
it just
seen.
tells you how good of a player Murphy must be, because for him to grow up in Baton Rouge and go to Texas, it took a lot to Texas to get him. I mean, that's a huge jump there. But
there were a few cool moments like that.
There are always things.
I hope you see them on social media.
Well, I'm going to look for that. I just always hate the one where they're trying to make us cry. I don't want to cry. I don't want to have tears on this thing. It's too happy of a day.
It is. That is the beauty of it too. We can critique and we can make all of the comments that we want to make, but at the end of the day, these are truly dreams come true for so many of these players that they've worked all their lives for this moment. It means so much to their families. So yesterday also, we talked a lot about the 6 quarterbacks going in the top 12 picks. After Bo Nix, there is a big drop off, a big gap from the next batch of quarterbacks. You've got the Spencer Rattlers, the Michael Pratts, the Joe Miltons, down farther on the list. And there is a prop out there for who will draft Spencer Rattler. The Raiders right now are a plus 140 favorite, followed by the Rams and Giants as the next shortest shot at 5-1.
I think, to me, this one's hard because Spencer Rattler has got all the instincts and he's got the anticipation that you want. He just doesn't have a lot of the great skill that you need in terms of size and speed, and so if you're the Raiders, how much better is he than Aiden O'Connell? They both are like backup quarterbacks. Are you really improving your team? I don't think there's a quarterback out there. Now, we know Jim Nagy was on the show and he loves Michael Pratt as a potential starter. Obviously, when you talk,
he beat Caleb Williams in the Cotton Bowl, baby.
George Payton and at the Denver Broncos said there's 8 starters in the draft. I can't see that. So I think, to me, the Raiders, to draft a quarterback that they can't identify as the starter and to draft another undersized guy would be hard for me to believe. The Rams, I think the Rams would be in play here because I think the Rams Stetson Bennett wasn't the guy for them. Now, he's still on the team. But, these second-level quarterbacks, this isn't the round to draft them in. The 4th round is the round to draft them in because they're not starters. And this area of the draft is too important. You're going to get too many players that you need to come in and play right away.
So obviously we didn't see any first-round running backs, which we've talked so much about how the value of running back has changed and how you can find running backs in deeper rounds, all those things. The running back that gets a lot of attention, Blake Corum, certainly from Michigan.
I mean, you got to think that he might be going to the Chargers here at the top of the second.
That's what I was going to ask.
I think, to me, Jim's going to get guys in there that believe in Jim's program. It's plus 350. Look, Corum's a really good player. And he would fit them to a T. I think this is, whether it's Brooks, whether it's Benson, whether it's Corum, whether it's Ray Davis from Kentucky, there's some now most of those guys are down in the board, more in the bottom of the second. But knowing that, maybe knowing Jim as well as I do, he's going to want to get guys in that fit his mantra. He's done it a lot now. He's taken a lot of the guys. Got Gus Edwards there. He signed J.K. Dobbins. There may not be a place for him, and he may have to go to another position.
The Chargers.
Roman Wilson, he could see him taking the receiver from there.
The Chargers are picking 5th today, so number 37 overall. We'll see what happens there. Plus 350 for Blake Corum to go to the Chargers and reunite with his former head coach and Jim Harbaugh. I look at the Cowboys and I'm like, the stuff with Ezekiel Elliott, do they sign Zeke for another year and draft a running back?
I think they're going to draft a running back in this round. Okay. I really do. I think and if they draft a running back, the guy starts for him.
Alrighty, I'm trying to think. Where did they pick? 24th today, so they have to wait a little bit.
They're going to wait. That's a painful day.
We'll be right back, wrapping things up here on the Lombardi Line after just nonstop content from Michael Lombardi. He's finally going to get a breather after this 15 minutes. We'll be right back.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Bonatoni, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Don't miss out on any of the NBA playoff action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All the way through the finals, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and more. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code VSiN. New customers that do bet $5 get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's VSiN, VSiN, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours as we wrap up this draft recap edition of the Lombardi Line. Welcome back. We're live from Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas, and we are not in the business, Michael, after just the first round of grading teams' drafts and giving A's, B's, and C's, but you did put together a list of where you think the best fits were for certain players in the draft.
And I think, to me, this has a lot to do with, could this affect the win totals, right? I think there's certain players that are going to affect the win totals. John Alt, we'll start 5, work our way up. To me, Alt's a really good player. Now, whether they play him at left tackle or right tackle, they'll probably put him at left tackle, move Slater over. It's going to make them way more physical as a team. And it's going to help the Chargers kind of control the line of scrimmage, which I think is really important for them to do that. So I like that pick. I think he makes a difference, right? Now, one of the things I didn't do in this, Stormy, just for a little bit of background, is I didn't put the quarterbacks in here because I think it's too hard to really say, okay, this quarterback's going to do this quarterback's going to do that. So I didn't really put the quarterbacks in because I didn't really want to kind of mess around with all that, and I wanted to be able to go for that. So that I did that, and so now here we go. The second pick is the kid from the Chargers, Jared Versa from Florida State. I think this is a really good pick. You're going to see the trend here, Stormy. It's a lot about defensive players because they do matter. This kid can rush the passer. He's a defensive end. He can get up the field. He plays with power to go along with the 2 kids that they drafted in the second round. I think that was a great pick. I love Quentin Mitchell as my third best pick with the Philadelphia Eagles because the one thing the Eagles needed was a legitimate corner, and they get a legitimate man-to-man corner. And then, obviously, I'm a huge Murphy fan. I think Seattle hit it out of the park. But I think the one pick that could really change the AFC South a little bit, and if you're going to beat C.J. Stroud, you got to be able to rush the passer. The Latua pick for the Colts, to me, is a really good fit. Mm-hmm. They need this pick to help Gus Bradley's defense. And those are my 5 because I think they'll move the needle outside of the quarterbacks that can. And, everybody's going to – Neighbors, great player, but can they get him the ball?
Yeah.
Odunze, good player, but they've got other receivers on the team, right? So some of these things, Bowers, really good player, they can't block anybody. How are we going to get them the ball, right? And so when you take the quarterbacks out and you start looking at the first round, these guys, to me, don't need anybody to help them other than themselves.
Again, in order, those top 5 best fits from round 1 here for Michael. The Colts taking Latu, the Seattle Seahawks, Byron Murphy, Philadelphia, Quinyon Mitchell, the Rams, Jared Verse, and Chargers, Joe Alt up front.
And that goes into their win total. Like, I think the Colts now, with a rusher on the outside, they've improved that. They've re-signed their team, right? So they haven't really changed it. They got today and tomorrow to add more players. But they were close to beating Houston last year. They were close to beat. I mean, they're 1/3, 4th down play away from winning that game. So this edge is really going to help them. It really will help them. And I think their win total could be impacted by it. I think Seattle's win total is going to be something that you have to take a serious look at because Seattle's going to be much better on defense. There's no question.
So the Colts win total here, real quickly, just stick on that for a moment, sitting at 8.5 right now. It's juiced to the under at -135. But
that's because they didn't do any in free agency, right? They didn't make a move, and everybody. But this player gives them a legitimate, if he's healthy, gives them a legitimate edge rusher.
Yeah. So +110 to the over there. And you think, too, like, we don't really know still what Anthony Richardson's going to be. So he's going to be back healthy. You've got some protection.
He's going to be better than Gardner Minshew. You got to think that, right?
And you've got protection now with Joe Flacco, too. So I think that
I like them on the over. I don't know if I put more than pizza money on it. I like Seattle. I don't know if we have Seattle's profile here, Steph. But to me, Seattle adding what they've done this offseason with Seattle now. Seattle was
their
good.
Win total 7.5 right now.
I love that over. That might be my favorite over of all time because I think McDonald's a good coach. I think they're going to be better defensively than they ever were. Not disrespecting to Pete, but they were in transition on how they wanted to play. They got corners that can cover. They've got some more pass rushers. That offense is really good. Like, if Geno and their 2 tackles last year, if you remember, their 2 tackles, Abraham and Cross, they were both hurt for a lot of the part of the season. That running back, Murray's really good. This is a good team, Seattle. This is a really good team. And I think McDonald's going to make a huge difference. To me, Seattle is the Houston of this year's team.
looking at the Defensive Rookie of the Year odds board right now, Dallas Turner has been bet down from, he was a co-favorite, plus 650 with Leatu Latu. Now Dallas Turner is a 4-1 favorite. Leatu 7-1. You can get Byron Murphy at 13-1.
Yeah, I mean, inside pressure is hard to get, and I would take a shot at that. Look, last year this was a slam dunk. It was definitely going to be Jalen Carter, and he didn't end up doing it. Will Anderson came through and cut through that. You know, Chop Robinson. Now I don't know if he'll play enough for them because they got Phillips and they got Chubb. Is he going to be able to get on the field to get enough in there? I think that's the question. I think Mitchell,
Wait, hold on. Before we move off Chop, you know how he got his name?
No.
Apparently, he was like a 14-pound baby, and he was just a massive child. And then they called him Pork Chop. And then as he got older, it just shortened to Chop. So
I know how that goes.
Fitting.
Yeah,
very
I know
fitting.
how that goes. I mean, look, the Eagles, Mitchell. I think Mitchell. Now, it's hard to give a corner unless he intercepts a lot of passes. How about Kool-Aid? He's on the board, and he's not even drafted yet. That's a beautiful thing. Same thing with
He's
the Gene.
got the NFL logo on our graphic.
Same
That's
with
great.
The Gene. He's on the board. He's not even drafted yet. I love that. I think Mitchell, because of Philly's ability to rush the passer and his coverage man-to-man, look, the problem with Mitchell is to play him for Defensive Player of the Year, nobody's going to go after Mitchell, even though he's a rookie. They're going to go after Bradbury because they don't think Bradbury can cover.
10-1 the price on Quinyon Mitchell. Jared Verse 11-1. Chop, Terry and Arnold, and Byron Murphy all sitting 13-1. But again, Dallas Turner, your favorite there. And then to the surprise of nobody, Offensive Rookie of the Year favorite is the guy that went #1 overall at minus 20,000 the price, which people were betting, which God help ya. He is a plus 200 favorite, followed by Marvin Harrison Jr., 6-1. Jaden Daniels, plus 650. J.J. McCarthy, 8-1. Malik Neighbors, 9-1. And then Drake May, 16-1.
I would really put money on Marvin Harrison because with Kyler Murray, the mayor of Munchkinland, I think you got a chance to get him the football, right? And he's going to make a lot of plays. He's going to have a lot of catches for them. And they do a really good job of scheming their offense last year with really nothing, and they were able to do that. I like that one. That, to me, jumps out at me. Jaden Daniels, it's so hard for the rookies. McCarthy might not even play. You know, May's not going to play. I mean, Worthy's going to be a spot player. You know, Bo Nix is going to play, so there's somebody you might want to take a look at.
Rome Odunze you don't take because if he's having success, Caleb Williams is having success. So.
Yeah, so you know you're going to lose that play. Great point there.
Yeah.
You know, Penix is going to be standing next to you and I, so I don't understand, you know, how you would play that, right? I mean, so you can't play that one. And the only
you're
thing
betting on an injury if you're betting
the only
Penix.
thing that would hold, you know, Malik Neighbors could really be special because he's so talented at 9-1. But, you know, you're counting on Daniel Jones.
If you're looking for a shot, could you take Brian Thomas Jr. potentially at 25-1 if Trevor Lawrence gets it together?
I don't trust him as a player to be. Look at his career at LSU. There wasn't any consistency in his career at LSU. That would bother me. Could he take the world by, you know, he's got talent. He's a size, speed guy. But you know, are you getting the ball to Thomas or are you getting it to Evan Ingram? Are you getting the ball to Thomas or are you getting the ball to Kirk? Are you getting the ball to Thomas or are you getting the ball to Devin Duvernay? Or are you getting the ball to, you just signed Gabe Davis?
Yeah.
Like, how's he getting the ball? Like, how is he getting the ball? How many plays is he going to play?
That's it's like, with bringing in Gabe Davis and him, it's like, which one are you thinking truly is going to be your deep ball threat?
That's all Gabe Davis is a deep ball threat. He's an inside. He's a vertical outside and maybe run some digs. That's why Buffalo moved on. His route tree wasn't big enough. Neighbors is the interesting one because you got to count on the Giants to pass protect. But he gives them a huge weapon out there that is hard to cut. He is a legitimate number one receiver. Harrison gives you a chance because they're gonna get the ball to him. He's the best receiver on the team. Same thing with Neighbors. He's the best player on their team right now.
Yeah, but for me, I'm like, who's going to be throwing him the ball? Because is Daniel Jones going to be healthy? To your point, is he going to be upright, first of all? And then who's behind him?
And for all the talk, the Giants didn't want a quarterback. It was pretty clear they wanted one.
All right, Michael. So we have loved having you here. You've done about 5,000 shows over the course of the last 4 days. Are you? I know you enjoyed your time here, but are you relieved to get home soon? I
can't wait. I'm going to go see my grandkids today, which is great. And then I'm going to see them again tomorrow before I go home. But, I got one more show to do, and then I'm flying out of here. It's been great, though. I mean, who doesn't love the draft? I'm excited. I thought the Sixers were playing Saturday. They're playing Sunday now. I don't like that.
How hard was it for you last night to multitask on one of the screens?
No, I was watching it. I had it down here. Elliot put it finally down here in door number 2 here, so I was okay. But I told you I thought they would win. I didn't think they would cover. I thought they would win.
You didn't expect the 50 burger from
No,
Joel
I didn't.
Embiid.
I didn't expect that. But look, I didn't expect Michael Penix to go the 8th pick overall in the draft either. So there are a lot of expectations that, it was fun. I love it.
That is the beauty of
sports. Great to be here with you. Always great to be here with you, Stormy. I love it.
I appreciate you as always, Michael. I hope everybody cashed in last night with your bets on the draft, and you will moving forward as well with any of your NBA or NHL postseason wagers. That's a wrap for us here today. Coming up next on VSiN, Sharp Money with Patrick Maher, Dustin Sweetelson, and the whole crew. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you next week.